Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
5:06, it's O'Connor and Company. This Tuesday morning, we have more news about another Maryland man. And, of course, you know what that means. It's an illegal immigrant in this country, member of MS-13. And, well, the result is a murdered innocent Maryland woman. We'll give you all those details. We'll find out whether Chris Van Hollen will be, taking up this person's cause as well. Because it's all about due process, Process. That's where we are now in Maryland. So innocent people will be murdered, but thank God non-citizens and members of terrorist organizations will be getting their due process, because that's what the Democrats stand for. They're fighting. They want to make sure that you know that they're fighting, because that's what the focus group said. We just want you to fight. But I want you to ask a secondary question, if you could, because you're not in these focus groups. Who were they fighting for exactly? We're going to get into all of that later this morning. Also, at 7:05, we'll speak to the Republican nominee, officially now for Lieutenant Governor, John Reed. As you just heard, Pat Harity withdrawing his nomination for the primary. So it's John Reed, and the Republican slate is set. 7:35, Bill Donahue from the Catholic League on preparations for the papal funeral, and then the conclave, which will be unlike the movie, I promise you. Julie, you'd love this. Jake Tapper yesterday said, and then there will be a conclave, which, of course, as you know, has been made famous by the recent film.
Good God.
Yeah. Nobody knew anything about conclaves until this recent film. We had no idea. I mean, it's only happened 250 times over the last 2,000 years. Thank God Jake Tapper's there watching Hollywood. 8:05, we'll speak with Victoria Cobb from the Family Foundation. And then at 8:35, the chairman of the Republican National Committee, Michael Whatley, who, of course, as you know, left his incredible career as a Irish folk dancer. In fact, Michael Whatley, I believe, is Lord of the Dance, if I remember right, to take on the case. I'm sorry, is that a different guy?
I think so.
That's not? Oh, Flatley. I'm
there
sorry.
You go.
Well, potato. I'm Larry O'Connor, and that's Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
I am a Maryland man, as you know.
Yes, you are. A Maryland dad.
Yeah, I am a loving father, and one of my children is autistic. But strangely, I'm not a member of the MS-13 terrorist organization. So Chris Van Hollen has lost my number.
He doesn't care.
He really doesn't. Did you see another posse of 4 Democrats went down there. And I had jokingly said, because James Comer, chairman of the House Oversight Committee, is in charge of allocating federal funds for these trips. And he said, no, we're not going to pay for that. And I was thinking, no, do it. Pay for, oh my gosh, we should raise money for this. Every Democrat who wants to go to El Salvador raise the money. So I only half jokingly said that. But it turns out Comer, talk about a chess move here. So these Democrats go down to meet with, Maryland man and check out those knuckle tattoos. I'm like, get me some sweet knuckle tattoos. Hey, there's no actual M&S there. That's just a marijuana leaf and a snake. All right, so they go down there, this posse. They do all their media appearances. Yep, we're going to go. We're going to storm the castle. We're going to get in there. And then the president of El Salvador stops them at the door. Well, I'm guessing it was his representatives.
Right.
And they said, we're from Congress, and we want to see our guy, our American Maryland man. And they're like, okay, is this an official business visit? Is this official business of the United States government? And they're like, well, no, the government didn't pay for this. Because Comer wouldn't give the money. And so El Salvador says, I'm so sorry. If it's not an official business visit, he's not taking he's not taking visitors at this time.
The best news that broke yesterday is Maxine Dexter. She's a Democrat congresswoman. I don't know where she's from, but she's a Democrat. She said she is not leaving El Salvador until this guy is released. And I say, more of that, please.
Why
more
is it
of that. Please stay.
Mike Johnson, I believe she's from Oregon, and she's got the air of a they-them situation. Yeah. Is it Mike Johnson should have a whole slate of votes right now on bills? He's got the biggest margin he's ever going to have.
Let's do it. Daylight savings times and defund NPR right now.
Democrat caucus is all meeting in El Salvador. Is it true that they're actually scoping out locations for the 2028 Democrat National Convention?
There are some sweet resorts down there.
Well, and half of their voters are going to be deported to the prison down there by the time Trump is done, so they might as well do this. I don't know why. I'm bemused. They're like, we're not done with this. This horse may seem dead to you, but we're going to beat it like it's Secretariat coming around the
polling isn't low enough yet. We need lower polling. Lower.
Well, the sad thing is, because I was saying Chris Van Hollen is doing this to further his political career. And honestly, the saddest part of this is that with the Democrat base, it probably works. In terms of raising money, in terms of polling, they probably like, oh, yeah, that Chris Van Hollen, I like him because he fights.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do think that there are some Democrats that are just tired of this and see real problems in the country. When you say the base, I feel like maybe you're talking about, the Democrat Party, like the most liberal wing, which, is in charge, and they're the loudest. And I think that there are normal Democrats. Like, I think about the Democrats when I was in college or something, and they must be rolling their eyes and horrified by this.
But
I do think like sort of the AOC wing is fine with this.
Authorities have charged an illegal alien with murder after a body believed to be that of a missing 23-year-old woman was found in Prince George's County, Maryland. Suspect in the case, 24-year-old Casey Robinson Alexi Barrera Rosa, whom officials said is in the country illegally. This is according to Fox 5 reporting.
The next darling of the Democrats.
The victim identified as Waldorf resident Lesbia Milith Ramirez Guerrera, reported missing on April 2nd. She was last seen on March 31st at her home, where she lived with several people, including Rosa, who was her boyfriend and the father of her 2 children. Authorities said there was reportedly suspicious activity at the home the day after she was last seen. He's just a Maryland man. By the way, he is also believed to be joined with an accomplice. His immigration status is unknown, but I think that we can guess. His name is Rolvin Eduardo Barrera. Because sometimes one Barrera just isn't enough to get the job done. They've both been arrested in the murder of this woman. But, they're in the country illegally from El Salvador in Prince George's County. They're Maryland men. They're Maryland fathers.
Just
and
Maryland
the important
dads.
thing is Democrats are going to be fighting for their due process. And I'm all for due process. You know where I really like to put my due process? At the moment when people are entering this country. We have due process
Try
there,
that
too.
for a change.
There's definitely some due process there. And everybody who's saying, well, they deserve their day in court, explain to me how our court system survives if 15 to 20 million people in this country illegally each individually get their day in court with an appeal. And meanwhile, guess what? There are American citizens who would love their day in court, too.
Yeah.
There are American citizens who are charged with crimes who deserve a day in court. So who gets,
all done by design, Larry. All
president?
done by design.
Sure seems like it. And if anybody's screaming at Trump for actually exercising his constitutional role as president in protecting our national security and deporting people who are in the country illegally and who have been deemed so by an immigration judge who's issued a deportation order, if they don't like that, well, their anger should be focused at the last president, the border czar, and the Secretary of Homeland Security who created this mess, not the guy who's trying to clean it up. It's 5:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
So Jesse Waters, who has a primetime show on Fox News Channel. You like that, Jesse Waters?
Sure.
A bit of a smart aleck, though, isn't he? I mean, he couldn't do radio. I know that. Maybe a podcast, but not radio. Jesse Waters sends out one of his producers with a camera and a microphone to talk to the man on the street. That's usually pretty amusing. They decided to send somebody specifically to Maryland to talk to Marylanders about Maryland Man and about their senator.
He was living in Maryland, designated MS-13 terrorist, and Donald Trump deported him. How does that make you feel?
I feel safer.
He gotta go. He gotta go.
Need to go. I mean, that's it.
But he was a father.
But he's still a terrorist.
Okay. I mean, but there's children there's children living without fathers now.
He should have picked and choose, so he picked to be a terrorist instead of worrying about his children.
By the way, just because it's a visual, and I personally, this doesn't matter to me, but it does matter to some people in the media, it appears that this is Prince George's County, and these are all African-American women.
That's right.
Who are responding to
and
this.
some men, too.
Eventually we get some, but so just so you know, these are the people who have to live. See, Chris Van Hollen, it's funny. Chris Van Hollen doesn't live next door to the Maryland man that he's now championing. You know, the guy who he goes down to El Salvador for. His neighborhood, very different. Jamie Raskin, lovely neighborhood there in Tacoma Park. He doesn't have to live next door to the MS-13 gang members.
Does Van Hollen care about this 24-year-old Waldorf, Maryland woman who was just found murdered? And allegedly by 2 illegal aliens from El Salvador. Is he going to care about them? No,
well, he says that he cared quite a bit about Rachel Morin's family as well. He said that. He was asked by Shannon Bream on Fox News Channel this weekend. He said, oh, no, I cared quite a bit. He didn't do anything.
He didn't call her.
He didn't call her. He didn't go to her. He didn't visit her. He didn't say anything.
Floor.
He didn't deliver anything, a post on Twitter or X
deliver
or
a congressional speech here.
He didn't do anything. Nope. But he said he cared deeply.
Oh, he cared,
and
apparently.
the feels is really all that matters, I think.
Yeah,
so I don't know. Doesn't care much for it, no. I mean, it cares a lot, but didn't do anything.
The Democrats, they want him back. They say he was wrongfully deported. He has a wife and a kid who's a citizen. They're calling this a national emergency. Is this a national emergency?
I wouldn't call it a national emergency. We got more things going on.
We have more things, more fish to fry.
I just found out about it, so I don't think so. What kind of national emergency? For what? What is the emergency for?
Ain't no national emergency, no.
He was accused of hitting his wife twice and was a suspected human smuggler.
By the way, I just want to point out the brilliance of how this segment on Jesse Waters develops, because the producer with the microphone, which is kind of ironic because this is what Jesse used to do for Bill O'Reilly, right?
Right.
When he was a producer. So, Jesse's like, all right, you're going to do what I did for O'Reilly. All he's doing is repeating the facts of the case. By the way, facts that you generally don't get when you're watching Jake Tapper or watching George Stephanopoulos or, God forbid, Michael Strahan conducting the hard-hitting interview. Right. All he's doing is repeating the facts of the case as reported in corporate legacy media and letting people respond to it. He's not pushing them. He's not being, in any way disruptive or in any way polemic. He's just, here are the facts, and then getting people's reactions.
Was he wrongfully deported?
No. He need to go.
If he's a smuggler, yeah, he needs to be deported.
It's better to be safe than sorry.
Your senator here, Chris Van Hollen, he flew to El Salvador where this guy was deported. He met with them, had lunch with them, had margaritas on the table. What's up with your senator?
I have no idea, but I do believe that was a waste of taxpayer dollars.
Margaritas.
You agreeing with somebody whipping their wife, terrorizing where you live, then you don't need to live here either.
Senator Van Hollen, you need to come see me, Mr. Coley, because you doing like that. You need to take care of home before you go to other states.
He went to El Salvador.
Oh, that's another country. Excuse me.
What?
All right, so I think
it.
you get the idea, Julie. So here's what's interesting. Yesterday, I noticed this. It was mostly just right-of-center media outlets who were continuing to talk about this story. The liberals, the left, the Democrats, the tappers, they now suddenly want to pivot and talk about Pete Hegseth. I think maybe they know they've lost this one miserably.
Absolutely. They are desperate for, and honestly, most of them are like, Pope's not good enough. We got to find a different, right?
Chris Van Hollen wakes up in the morning yesterday and sees the news about Pope Francis, and he's like inside silently.
They're like, I need a Kardashian to go down in a plane. I need some distraction, okay? And the Pope is not enough.
Well, we did learn yesterday about Kanye West, who was sort of a Kardashian for a while there. He went down, but in a very different way, not in a plane. But that's a story for another show, maybe a podcast.
Coming up, we have the latest fake news about SecDef Pete Hegseth. These are news stories that are based on a lot of, you guessed it, anonymous sources. Washington loves anonymous sources. We'll figure it out. Keep it here. It's 5:30.
WMAL-FM Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:36 this Tuesday morning. Thank you for tuning in. Letting us be a part of your morning routine. It's O'Connor and Company. Coming up at 7:05, John Reed's now officially the nominee for the Republican Party for Lieutenant Governor, and he'll be our guest. This is after Pat Harity decided to withdraw from the primary race. Are they doing construction around here today? Is that what's going on? Got some drilling happening? Didn't get a memo about that. That's cool. 7:35, Bill Donahue, Catholic League, talk about the preparations for the next pope. And the disposition of the remains of this pope. 8:05 is Victoria Cobb Family Foundation. And at 8:35, Chairman of the Republican National Committee, Michael Whatley. It's Larry O'Connor and Julie Gunlock. You know how easily distracted I am, Julie. So when I'm hearing a big old drill hitting some construction, who knew construction workers working this early in the morning?
I didn't see a memo either.
And at a radio studio of all places.
I know.
See, this is why. This is just one of the many reasons why. All right, NPR, by the way, is a radio. Did you know that NPR does radio? That's what the R stands for. Radio.
I heard.
Yeah, NPR.
They claim to be a news outlet.
They're not really, though, are they?
Not really.
No, well, unless it's fake news. Caroline Leavitt, she's the White House spokesperson. She called out a story. Here's the headline from NPR, funded by your tax dollars. Mm-hmm. The White House has begun the process of looking for a new Secretary of Defense. Wow, that seems pretty definitive, that headline, doesn't it? Yes. That's got to be real. Why would they lie about that? You stick your neck out on a story like that. See, this is why they didn't want to dabble in the Hunter Biden story, because, they still weren't sure about it. Right. So you don't want to stick your neck out on a story where there's so many unknowns, right? Right. In fact,
they're sure about this.
Didn't they brag about the fact that they didn't cover that story? They actually, they grandstanded. Here's why we're not covering this story. That turned out being probably the most consequential political story of the 2020 election.
Well, and the same media who ignored Joe Biden, cognitive decline. They just stacking up the wins.
So this story has two. By the way, cut to the chase. Caroline Leavitt flagged it on X and said, this NPR story is total fake news based on one anonymous source who clearly has no idea what they're talking about. The president said this morning he stands strongly behind the Secretary of Defense. Exclusive, says the headline. It's an exclusive. This is written. It took two reporters to write this one, Tom Bowman and Quill Lawrence. Boy, Mr. Bowman and I'm guessing Mr. Lawrence. Quill's a toughie. Yeah, Quill's a dude, at least based on this photograph I'm looking at. You can never tell these days, and it is NPR. But Mr. Bowman and Mr. Lawrence's parents must be so happy they paid for that journalism degree so that their kids could write this one. White House has begun the process of looking for a new leader at the Pentagon to replace Pete Hegseth, according to a U.S. official who was not authorized to speak publicly. Whatever happened to two sources on a story? Remember that whole thing about Watergate and the whole...
Those are the days.
Yeah, all the president's men. Get us two sources, make sure it's rock solid. Defense Secretary is under fire after revelations that he shared classified information in a group chat with his wife, brother, and lawyer, according to the official. By the way, that story was also anonymously sourced. Also, that one's from the New York Times. So here's what happens. New York Times gets an anonymously sourced story. They run with it. Then NPR says, well, he's under fire because of that story, which we haven't validated ourselves. But now we'll get another anonymous source to say that he's under fire. Yeah, that's how it happens.
There you go.
The single source, said Hegseth used the Signal messaging app on his personal smartphone, detailing minute-by-minute class. Yeah, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
This is the extra level of the fake news here is that we're paying for it. And how many stories have rolled out the exact same way that say, according to a source who cannot be named, that ended up being false, and there's no repercussions for it. By the way, this story could be true. I don't know. Caroline Leavitt did say the president stands, and the president was pretty clear yesterday at the Easter egg roll when asked about his support for Pete Hegseth. And the other great story that I loved was that 36 Democrat senators have said that Pete Hegseth should step down. Hold on. Stop the presses. You're telling me that the same people who voted against his nomination now continue 2 months later to not want him to be Secretary of Defense? That is big news.
What is so funny also is that the media admits, they report on the fact that he's a disruptor. That, he's going in there, he's cleaning house, he's firing people for insubordination, he's getting rid of the woke stuff. He's removing clearances. He is really cleaning house. What do you think happens when you clean house? What happens? Oh, you get a whole bunch of anonymous sources and disgruntled former employees who are willing to write big opinion pieces in Politico that Politico then sets up as news. No. That's an opinion piece written by a former employee who was basically told to resign, and then a bunch of anonymous sources who are going to back that up. I mean, when you go into an organization like the Pentagon and the Department of Defense and you disrupt it, there's going to be some angry people.
Yeah.
And they're going to, and then the news is going to present these people as just, good-willed anonymous sources. It's insane. And I'm glad, look, Trump has a really great record of standing by staffers who are under fire. I think, or nominees like Kavanaugh, right? And others. He does not back off of a fight. So it's been pretty cruel, though. They're making jokes about Hegseth's, they're suggesting he was drinking. The cruelty never ends. Yeah. But I hope he can weather this.
All right. So I'm sure people have heard this story, but I've got a little nugget here about Signal, the Signal app, and about NPR that is sort of buried in this story, that if people are looking, they'll see it. And I want to share it with you because we're told that Signal, you can't use Signal. Signal is horrible. Signal is terrible. Signal is compromised, especially if you're Secretary of Defense. Awful thing. There's a connection between Signal and NPR that I'm going to raise for you that no one else is talking about, but this is why you come here. And I'll tell you all about it coming up in just a moment. Right now, it's 5:43.
WMAL, more than just politics, because laughter is the best medicine. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
So Pete Hegseth should be fired because he used the Signal app. He used it a second time, according to this report that is unsourced and no one's confirmed it. He should have been fired the first time he used the Signal app to communicate to people. Now, we've already told you that government-issued devices have the Signal app pre-installed, and employees are told to use Signal. Julie and I have told you that we interact with people who work in the government now via Signal. This is a thing, and it's nothing new, by the way. This is not exclusive to the Trump administration. But the takeaway here is that Signal cannot be trusted. Signal is not secure. Signal should not be used for any of these things, right? That's the one thing that we all have learned from this story. So you scroll down to the bottom of the story at NPR, telling about how Pete Hegseth should be fired because he used the Signal app. And there's this little italicized note from the publisher at NPR.com. NPR disclosure. Catherine Maher, the CEO of NPR, chairs the board of the Signal Foundation.
Jeez.
The Signal Foundation, it's a nonprofit organization that was created to develop the Signal app in the first place. Founded in 2018, its mission is to protect free expression and enable secure global communication through open source privacy technology. So the Signal Foundation is a nonprofit that owns and empowers the development and creation and promulgation of the Signal app, the very app that Pete Hegseth is accused of using by NPR. And that foundation that developed the app in the first place, the chairman of the board is also the CEO of NPR.
Which
Julie,
is writing this.
What do I do with that information? Where do you go with that?
It really is just, this city is just, it never fails to surprise me. I sometimes say on this show, I sometimes go, it's just shocking. And I think to myself, I have been in this town since I was 19 years old, and I'm still shocked.
Yes.
I am still, maybe it's my Midwest upbringing. Maybe it's the fact that, I believe in the good of people. You couldn't make this up. You really couldn't make this up.
The foundation started with an initial $50 million loan from Brian Acton, co-founder. He used to work with WhatsApp's parent company, Facebook. Freedom of the Press Foundation had previously served as the Signal's project's fiscal sponsor. The Freedom of the Press Foundation was all in on developing the Signal app. They continue to accept donations. By the end of 2018, the loan had increased to $105 million, due to be repaid February of 2068, an unsecured loan at 0% interest. But that's the seed money for the Signal Foundation, chaired by Catherine Maher, the CEO of NPR. And now that very same NPR is writing hit pieces on Pete Hegseth for using the Signal app that was developed by the Freedom of the Press Foundation.
Specifically to protect people in the government who want to be assured that their messages are secured.
That's correct.
It's just
that is
beautiful.
Correct. And now people in the government are using the app. And by the way, it's pretty damn secure. And NPR is going after them, calling for their heads if they use the very same app. And then, when Ms. Maher is not chairing the board of the Signal Foundation, developing the app that Pete Hegseth used that apparently he shouldn't have used, she then goes to Congress as CEO of NPR and begs for taxpayer money to fund the journalism that is calling for Pete Hegseth's head for using the Signal app.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to pivot, but and still Congress is not moving to defund NPR.
Well,
okay?
What
are you guys doing up there?
I believe they are. No, to be fair, I think that they are waiting for the Trump administration has signaled, if I can use that word in this context, that they're going to be sending a rescission notice to defund that way. Although you're right, they could just dismantle it, the whole damn thing.
I'm just so tired of waiting. That and daylight savings time. I'm going to lose my mind, Larry. Just do it.
Here's today's Washington Post headline, or last night's Washington Post headline, same thing. Pete Hegseth, isolated and defiant, has Trump's backing for now. So wait a second.
For now.
How isolated can he be if the president of the United States is supporting him and backing him?
They don't care.
He's isolated.
Yeah.
Hegseth faces heat after news signal chat emerges and claim of Pentagon chaos. And, of course, the claim you pointed out yesterday was from a disgruntled former employee that published the claim in an opinion piece, and then everyone ran with it saying, well, this is fact, when it was clearly delivered in an opinion piece.
Remember how outraged I got to be fair. Remember how outraged they were when Biden's SecDef took, a couple weeks off to get surgery and then didn't tell anybody and then didn't even tell his deputy who was on vacation in somewhere like Puerto Rico and she had to drop everything, leave the beach.
That does sound familiar.
Remember how outraged they were when they left the country just sort of unsecure, Larry? They just nobody in charge at the Pentagon, but of course, using Signal to tell your wife you'll be a half an hour late. Yes, let's really find the outrage here.
Yeah, you're right. This is chaos at the Pentagon. What happened at the Abbey Gate during the Afghanistan withdrawal when nobody lost their job, that wasn't chaos.
Yeah, that wasn't chaos.
That was business as usual.
When you left billions of dollars of equipment on the ground in Afghanistan.
Not chaotic. Not chaotic at all. That's business as usual. That's the kind of steady hand we want at the Pentagon.
Yep.
Yesterday, the president was asked specifically about Hegseth at the Easter egg roll.
Are you bringing up Signal again? I thought they gave that up 2 weeks ago.
There was a new report this weekend that he used it in a separate chat that included some family members.
It's just all...
family members.
It's all just the same old stuff from the media. That's an old one. Try finding something new.
He was also asked, what do you think of Hegseth? He said, I'll ask you this. What do the Houthis think of Hegseth right now? It's 5:53.